He said I should disappear. They laughed like it was a toast. I decided to grant his wish on my terms. The cake wobbled in my left hand as I nudged the slider with my elbow. Chocolate and sugar, heavy and sweet. 28 candles waited in the drawer. A small black box tucked under my arm held my father's watch, thin, precise, stubbornly ticking through 3 generations like a promise nobody keeps anymore. Through the glass, string lights humming, grill smoke rising in lazy ribbons, my son in the middle of it like a conductor. Brandon, 28 today. Samantha at the patio table, legs crossed, scrolling. Mike and Jason posted near the grill with beers and easy opinions. Your dad went all out, Mike said, loud enough to clip through the door. Sound system? Catering? Man's trying to win Father of the Year. Brandon drank, eyes on the yard, not the house. He's buying affection. He always does. The cake tilted. I caught it. My heartbeat didn't. It kept walking toward a cliff like it didn't see the sign. Jason snorted. Engineer brain. Dude probably planned your life in a spreadsheet. Samantha flicked her eyes up, then back to her phone. You could always move out. With what money? Brandon said, smile thin as a knife. He controls everything. Acts like I'm 12. He raised his bottle toward the kitchen, toward me, without knowing it. Honestly, best gift he could give me is to disappear. Permanently. The words didn't boom. They slid under my ribs and locked there. Clean. Practiced. I stepped out of the sight line and set the cake on the island. Frosting smeared my cuff. The watch box sat beside it like a neat square of night. Happy birthday hung over the sink, cheap foil letters catching the light as if applause were a thing banners could give. Memories lined up whether I invited them or not. Brandon on a bike with training wheels. Brandon at 11, front tooth chipped, laughing at the kitchen table. Brandon at 18, hugging me too hard at graduation and promising to make it up someday. Then newer ones. The car lot sneer when I suggested a cheaper model. The Christmas dinner where he let his friends use my table as a stage to laugh at my rules. 1,000 soft yes. Each one growing teeth. I took the yellow legal pad from the drawer. Brandon. Samantha. Underlined twice. Assets. House. Mine. Utilities. Mine. Insurance, taxes, internet, mine. SUV in the driveway, mine on paper, his in practice. Speakers now shaking my glass, mine today, theirs by habit. Costs, real rent on this block. Average utilities, food, emergencies. The price of peace dressed as parenting. Leverage, title, keys, access. Who signs? Who cancels? Who stops? The pen sat warm between my fingers. Outside, grease hissed on hot metal. A cheer rose for a joke I didn't hear. I didn't need to. 2 images burned in and stayed, the string lights reflected in the glass like small patient stars, and my son framed by smoke, hand up, mouth open, inviting everyone to enjoy the sound of me shrinking. Enough. I wiped my cuff, walked to the door, and slid it open. Night air slipped under my collar. Beer. Charcoal. The tart bite of the orange tree by the fence. Heads turned just enough to say I'd interrupted their show at the wrong time. Brandon looked at me with the grin he wore when he needed me to behave. Dad, you made it. Can we talk, I said, in private. He didn't lower his voice. Of course he didn't. Whatever you heard, it's true. You make everything about your expectations. It's exhausting. A few faces flinched. Most watched. Free entertainment in my backyard. 28 years, I said. Lights, food, a roof, cars, bailouts. I didn't ask you to, he said, shrugging. You chose that. Doesn't mean I owe you my life. Samantha smiled without teeth. Jason sipped and tried to look wise. If you want me gone, I said, even. Say it to my face. He held my eyes, and for a heartbeat I saw a 7-year-old counting lightning. Then the mask settled. Disappear, he said. Best gift you could give me. The click inside me was not pain. It was alignment. Done, I said. I walked past him to the folding table with the speaker. The wireless mic lay there in black plastic calm. I picked it up. Pressed power. Green LED. The bass still thumped. I turned the volume knob 3 clicks clockwise. White noise kissed the edges of the yard. People turned toward me like flowers to wind. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, and my voice filled my property. I tapped pause. Music snapped off. The quiet afterward had shape. Grill metal ticked as it cooled. A bottle rolled, clinked against concrete, stopped. "This party is over," I said. "Please leave my property." It landed like a dropped brick. Conversation stalled midword. Even the drunk ones sobered long enough to look at Brandon. He lifted his chin. "Nobody's leaving," he told the crowd, "not me. It's my birthday. You're all welcome." "Robert," Mike said, trying to throw a blanket over a fire. "Don't do this to the kid tonight." "This is my house," I said into the mic, "my yard. My rules. Calm. Factual. Clinical. The way I said load limit at work. If you stay after I ask you to leave, it's trespassing." Jason laughed, a little too high. "You wouldn't call the cops on your own son." "Watch me," I said, and set the mic down. Faces moved through a cycle, amused, uncertain, strategic. Half the yard slid toward the gate because they understood the difference between a story and a record. The other half bunched around Brandon like good intentions. "Dad," he said, dropping the show voice. "Put the mic down and stop embarrassing yourself." "You wanted me gone?" I said without the speakers. "When I go, the house goes with me." I stepped inside. Soft click of the door. The kitchen clock ticked. The cake sat patient. The watch box glowed like something that belonged to someone else. I dialed. 911, what's your emergency?" "No emergency," I said, steady. "I'm the property owner at 412 Sequoia Drive. I asked uninvited guests to leave. They refused. Officers are en route." Through the window, I watched the yard hold its breath. A few more drifted off, shame walking through the side gate with cups hidden at their sides. The loyal one stayed. Samantha stared straight at my window like she could will me to evaporate. I didn't hide. I stood where they could see me. The red and blue arrived 10 minutes later, light washing over my lawn like slow water. The first cruiser eased to the curb. A second slid behind it. 2 officers came through the gate, jackets zipped, eyes scanning. "Who called?" the taller one asked. "I did," I said from the back step. I handed over my ID and the folded property tax bill I'd pulled from the file drawer because I don't argue without paper. He read, nodded. His partner lifted her voice so the yard could hear. "Folks, the property owner has asked you to leave. Please do so now. If you remain, you can be cited for trespass." Most people decided they loved their own beds. Shoes scuffed on concrete. The string lights buzzed as the wind finally found them. Smoke thinned. The yard shrank to its core. Brandon, Mike, Jason, and Samantha with that glassy smile you wear when winning turns into audience participation. "I live here," Brandon announced, crossing his arms. "This is my home too. You live here by permission," I said. Permission withdrawn. The officer's hand hovered near his cuffs. "Sir, last chance," he told my son. "Step off the property." Brandon's bravado flickered. Anger rushed in to fill the space. No, the night held very still. Cold slid under my collar again. The watch on the island ticked in my memory. A candle somewhere outside guttered and went out. "Turn around," the officer said, calm as a judge. "Hands behind your back." Samantha made a sound like a glass hairline cracking. Mike didn't move. Jason took a half step back. Brandon locked eyes with me as the metal closed. Surprise. Rage. Something that looked like fear. "You'll regret this," he said, teeth tight. Maybe, but regret wasn't the point. The click of the cuffs echoed off my patio like a door closing in a familiar hall. He thought the click of cuffs was the end. It was only my green light. Red and blue washed the kitchen walls, then slid off into the street. The yard exhaled. Wind stirred the banner over the sink until the Y in birthday frayed loose and dangled like a broken tooth. I stood by the island with the abandoned cake and my father's watch, listening to the house settle after years of noise. Coffee at dawn. Clean mug. No footsteps upstairs. Steam rose in a thin column and vanished into the kitchen's cold. The legal pad waited where I'd left it. I added a line. Step 1, consequence. Complete. Step 2, control. Begins now. I started with what made the most noise, the SUV. Brandon liked the rumble. the way the block turned to look. He'd stored it here for weeks because their garage was full of inventory. The title, though, still under Robert L. Davis. I pulled the folder, ran my thumb over the embossed seal, and drove to the bank the minute doors unlocked. Banks have a smell, paper, toner, recirculated air. The manager, a quiet woman with a silver bracelet, recognized me from years of steady deposits and no drama. She slid the transfer form across the desk, and I slid it back signed. Clean, simple. Title perfected. Lien cleared. The kind of quiet work Brandon never noticed until it vanished from under his feet. Outside, the morning was sharp enough to sting your gums. I called the insurer in the parking lot. Remove secondary driver authorization effective immediately, I said. Yes, locks too. Reissue fob. The agent tapped keys. My phone dinged. A confirmation hit my email. Another line on the pad, vehicle access, revoked. Next, Samantha's boutique. She says built from scratch. What she means is built from my credit. I had guaranteed her line because we're family, and I used to think that sentence meant something. Back at my kitchen table, I drafted a letter that didn't raise its voice. Effective immediately, I withdraw my personal guarantee on the open revolving facility for Juniper and Mint LLC due to material change in borrower risk. I copied the clause numbers, attached proof of notice, hit send to lender and landlord, then printed a hard copy because paper is gravity. Somewhere across town, a clock started for Samantha. She wouldn't hear it yet. She would. I ate a slice of the cake with a fork straight from the pan. It was too sweet. The frosting was thick and tired on my tongue. Outside, the afternoon sun slid across the fence, painting the citrus leaves a hard green. 2 visual anchors held, the thin steam from my coffee dying into the ceiling, and the pale square on the wall where a family photo had hung until last year when I took it down and never replaced it. By noon, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Voice I knew. Mr. Davis. Vince Russo. Smooth gravel. Your boy's behind. I looked at the legal pad and underlined leverage. How behind? 26 and change. With fees, 31. He promised Friday. That was 4 Fridays ago. What happens next if I do nothing? Nothing for 48 hours, Vince said. After that, I stop calling and start visiting. I prefer calling. I prefer visits not happening on my property, I said. He doesn't live here. A pause calculation on the other side of the line. We're aligned then. I'll call you tomorrow, I said, and hung up. I don't threaten. I schedule. Afternoon became errands with teeth. County clerk, quick call, confirmed Brandon's booking and release window. HOA office, quiet conversation, formalized noise violation documentation from 3 prior gatherings Brandon had hosted while I traveled. They apologized for not escalating sooner. I told them they would have another chance to practice if anyone attempted a reunion tour in my yard. At 3, I walked into the diner that feeds every rumor this zip code has. Stainless steel, lemon cleaner, the low hum of gossip like a refrigerator you stopped hearing years ago. I took my usual stool and asked for black coffee. When the owner asked how the birthday went, I smiled politely and said, short. We had to cut it early. Financial priorities took over. The booth behind me quieted to listen. Word would get to Samantha before dessert. Free marketing. By 4, an email from the lender. Guarantee release acknowledged. A second, account review triggered. A third, inventory audit request scheduled. I pictured Samantha in the back of her store with that brittle laugh, flipping a pen between fingers that always looked like they belonged in photos, not budgets. At 5, Brandon called from a borrowed number. I let it go to voicemail. He didn't leave one. He texted instead, "What did you do to the car?" No question mark. Of course not. Entitlement doesn't ask, it informs. I typed, then deleted. I returned it to its owner. What I sent, return my house key. No dots. Silence. The sun went down gold and then bruised. I replaced the dead porch bulb. You learn to fix small things when you can't fix the big ones. The house smelled like coffee and faint smoke. The watch box sat unopened on the counter like a verdict. The next morning I picked at the corner I'd been avoiding, passwords and paper. Brandon's name shouldn't have been anywhere in my digital life, but over the years convenience had smuggled him in. I changed logins, turned on two-factor everywhere, printed a list, sealed it, and put it in the safe with the birth certificates and the deed. Then I opened a file I hadn't touched since last spring, a scan of the boutique lease addendum. My signature at the bottom. Samantha's. The landlord's. It looked fine. Clean. Then I looked closer at page 2. There it was, faint, almost shy, a signature line I had never seen signed with my name. Not a perfect copy. They're hooked wrong. The Ian Davis dotted too early. A version of me I never wrote. It was dated 3 months after the original, and it authorized a limit increase. I printed the page and set it next to the original like a before and after photo of someone you used to trust. My phone buzzed. Email subject line. Account alert, new inquiry, using your SSN. A second buzz. Failed auto pay utilities. A third. Notice of past due, Juniper and Mint. Brandon and Samantha were throwing hooks in the dark, hoping one would land. One already had months ago, when my name walked onto a line I never approached. I stood. The chair legs scraped the floor. The house shifted around me, quiet and listening. New line on the pad, step 3, proof. Pull bank camera stills from the day of the addendum. Request eSign IP logs. Freeze credit. Call attorney. I dialed the bank. Calm voice. Clear nouns. Dates. The manager with the silver bracelet said she'd pulled a security footage and have compliance call me by morning. Understood. Mr. Davis, she said, and the way she said Mr. Davis told me she'd seen this film before. I froze my credit. 1 click, 3 bureaus, the most satisfying lock icon I've ever watched seal shut. Then I called an attorney whose card had sat in my drawer for years, under a rubber band with receipts and a will I hadn't updated since Brandon was a decent teenager. Tom, I said when he answered. It's Robert Davis. I need 2 things, a civil fraud consult and a clean, fast eviction process that starts the minute a key fails in my front door lock. Come in at 9, he said. Bring whatever you have. I looked at the kitchen clock. 10 hours and change. Steam rose from a fresh mug, thin as thread, then gone. Outside, a stray cat crossed the fence top like a tightrope, till an upright question mark in dusk. In the living room, the square on the wall where the photo had hung looked whiter now, like a healed scar that still itched before rain. My phone vibrated on the counter. New text, unknown number. A photo. Not of me. Of my mailbox. Today's post pulled out and fanned like a deck of cards in someone else's hand. A message under it. You're not the only one who knows how to pull strings, old man. No name. No emoji. Just grainy streetlight, my own address painted on the curb behind the shot like a witness that won't testify. I turned off the porch light and watched the street through the slit in the curtains. Stillness. A sprinkler ticking. A car door somewhere 2 blocks over. The watch box on the counter felt heavier. Tomorrow at 9, I'd bring proof and start the formal part of this. Tonight, I stood in the dark, the house wrapped around me like a fist, and listened to the quiet for movement. Someone had crossed a line I never signed. I was going to draw a new one they couldn't. Some people hide their dirt. I prefer to stack it where everyone can see. Morning hit hard and gray, the kind of light that flattens every color. I sat in the attorney's office with a manila folder between my hands and a cup of coffee that tasted like it had been brewed last week. Tom, my lawyer, leaned back, wire-rimmed glasses low on his nose, scanning the forged lease addendum like he was reading a bad script. This isn't sloppy, he said finally. It's calculated. I didn't answer. My jaw had been set since sunrise. He tapped the page. Ink and paper on this one. Probably printed off-site, walked in, signed when no one's looking. The signature? Either traced or copied from another doc. Easy to prove if we can pull original transaction records from the bank and landlord. I already called the bank. They're pulling security footage and e-sign logs. Good. He flipped to another page. This authorization line increased the credit limit by $25,000. That's not pocket change. No, I said. It's not. He studied me for a beat. You want restitution? Or blood? I looked him in the eye. I want them to know the ground's gone under their feet before they hit it. Tom smiled, not the friendly kind. Then we'll start with eviction notices, fraud alerts, and a little something called a prejudgment writ. We freeze what they think they own before they can sell it. By the time I walked out, the air had warmed, and the town felt too small to hold what was coming. I drove past Samantha's boutique, white curtains drawn, open sign flipped, a single dress on the mannequin that looked like it had been there for weeks. Two women on the sidewalk stopped mid-conversation to watch me pass. Gossip moves faster than traffic here. At home, the email from the bank was waiting. Subject line, surveillance clip, addendum signing. I clicked. There she was, Samantha, in my bank branch, hair perfect, smile rehearsed. Brandon beside her, shoulders squared like he owned the oxygen. The timestamp, a Tuesday morning in July, the exact week I'd been 2 states away. My signature appeared on the form between cuts of them talking to the teller. But it wasn't my hand holding the pen, it was Brandon's. He tilted the paper toward himself, made a show of writing, then passed it back. The camera wasn't close enough to catch the details, but the posture told the truth. This was a performance, not paperwork. I saved the file twice, one on my desktop, one on a drive I kept in a fireproof box. Then I printed stills, each on its own sheet, black and white so the details hit sharper. That's when I started the binder. 1 tab for forgery, 1 for financial exposure, 1 for assets. Clean, labeled no fat. Revenge is easier to carry when it's organized. By noon, the phone rang again. Vince. You've got interesting in-laws, he said. They're not in-laws, I corrected. Close enough. Word is your son-in-law tried to unload a set of tools at Garrison's Pawn this morning. Tools with a nameplate, R.L. Davis. My workbench. The one in the garage. I hadn't stepped out there in a week. I didn't rush. I drove slow, pulled into my driveway, and opened the side door. The bench was stripped bare, drawers half open, dust outlines where metal used to be. Even the old vise was gone. Some men would rage. I stood there, looking at the empty shapes, and made a mental note. Every piece had a serial number. I still had the purchase receipts in a folder marked workshop. I walked back inside, sat down at the kitchen table, and called the sheriff's office. Calm voice. Dates. Serial numbers. Photos. They took the report and promised a detective would follow up. 5 minutes later, I sent Vince the list too. I didn't have to ask. He'd make sure the right pawnshops knew those items were radioactive. Late afternoon, I drafted the eviction papers with Tom's template. I didn't sign them yet. Timing matters. You don't just swing, you choose when to let the weight drop. By evening, the streetlights came on and the wind carried the smell of someone grilling 2 houses over. Normal life untouched. My house was quiet enough to hear the hum of the fridge and the faint tick of my father's watch on the counter. The phone lit up with a text from Samantha. We need to talk. No, she needed to talk. I needed her to listen. I typed one word back, tomorrow. And as I set the phone down, I already knew tomorrow wasn't going to be a conversation. It was going to be the first shove down a long, steep slope. They thought the storm was far away. It was already over their heads. Morning came with the kind of cold air that makes metal sting to the touch. I parked across from Samantha and Brandon's rental, a 2-story colonial with peeling white shutters and a leaning mailbox. I didn't knock. I sat in my truck, engine off, and watched. At 8:14, Brandon stumbled out, coffee in one hand, phone in the other. He was dressed like a man late for something, tie half done, shoes untied. He slid into his pickup, backed out, and didn't see me. Good. I gave it 3 minutes, then walked up the cracked path and knocked once sharp. Samantha opened the door, wearing that same boutique smile she used when she wanted something. Dad, she said, like the word had splinters in it. Come in. I didn't move. Where's my workbench? Her face tightened. I don't know. Brandon said, don't say his name like it's an alibi, I cut in. She glanced over her shoulder, like the walls might help her. Look, we were in a tough spot. He said you weren't using it, not yours to take. Silence. Only the faint hum of their fridge behind her. I pulled an envelope from my coat and held it up. You'll want to open this after I'm gone. She took it, eyes flicking between me and the paper. What is it? Your first warning. I turned and walked back to the truck. Didn't look back. The envelope held 3 things: a printed still from the bank footage, Brandon holding the pen, a copy of the pawn report for my stolen tools, a 1-page notice of intent to evict with the date left blank. By the time I got home, my phone was lighting up. Calls. Texts. None of them answered. At noon, Vince called. Garrison's turned the tools into the sheriff. Brandon's name's on the pawn ticket. Perfect. I forwarded that to Tom. Within the hour, he filed a preliminary lien on their vehicle under the pretext of securing assets for the pending civil case. Legal, clean, and painful. By late afternoon, the rumor mill was spinning. A friend from the hardware store called to say Samantha had been in, buying boxes. Moving boxes. I let that settle for a moment, picturing her folding dresses into cardboard while Brandon ranted about setups and misunderstandings. The best part? Every word they spoke to each other now would be coded in suspicion. That's the rot that works fastest, when it starts inside the house. After dinner, I stepped into the garage. Empty shelves. Bare walls. It didn't feel like loss anymore. It felt like cleared ground, room for building something new. On the work table, I laid out the next phase, a schedule for filing the eviction, contacts at the utility companies, notes for the bank about the fraudulent credit increase, everything lined up in neat columns, no wasted motion. Outside, the night was windless still, the kind of stillness just before a storm finally breaks. And tomorrow? Tomorrow, I'd take away something they couldn't replace with a trip to the pawn shop. By the time dawn rolled in, I already had the day mapped out. Coffee, 2 calls, 1 visit, and a final nail. First call, the utility office. I kept my voice flat factual. I'm the property owner at 214 Cedar Row. Tenants are delinquent. Shut off water and power by Friday. The woman on the line hesitated. We usually give them notice. They've had notice, I said, and gave her the account number. End of discussion. Second call, my guy at the bank. Run the fraud flag on their joint account, I told him. The one tied to the credit bump last March. Yes, the authorization they filed is forged. Yes, I'll send you the proof. Today. He didn't ask for details. Just said understood. The visit was the tricky part. Sheriff's office. Deputy Morales leaned back in his chair as I laid the pawn ticket and bank footage on his desk. This is a civil matter, he started. I shook my head. No, it's theft. That's my name on those tools. That's his hand signing them away. He studied me for a long moment. You want me to haul him in? Not yet, I said. I want him knowing you could. By noon, Brandon was calling me. I didn't answer. His voicemails swung from bluster to begging in under 60 seconds. Classic panic curve. At 2:17 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Your daughter's at the church pantry asking for help. I didn't reply, but I pictured it, Samantha standing in line, trying to hide her face behind her hair, her nails still painted that expensive salon white. By sunset, the real hit landed. The bank froze their accounts. No warning. No way to pay the mortgage, the car loan, the groceries. Their debit cards, useless plastic. I was on my porch when Brandon's truck rolled up. He didn't get out at first. Just sat there, engine idling, staring at my house like it had grown teeth. Finally, he stepped out, slow, stiff. You think this is funny? He shouted from the sidewalk. I didn't bother standing. Not funny. Satisfying. He took a step forward. I stood then, the kind of stand that says one more step and you'll regret it. He read it right. He stopped. You can't do this to us, he said. I already did, I answered. He left with his hands in fists, like he was holding on to the last scrap of control he had. I went back inside, poured a drink, and crossed off 3 lines on my list. Tomorrow, I'd go after the roof over their heads. The morning air had that sharp, brittle edge, the kind that tells you winter's not coming, it's here. I stood at my kitchen window, coffee in hand, watching frost creep along the corners of the glass. Today wasn't about freezing water or cutting the lights. Today was about taking the ground out from under them. The mortgage papers were still in my safe, along with every receipt, Every proof of payment I'd made before they took over the house. Their names were never on the deed. Just mine. They'd been squatting in my property under the assumption that I'd never bother to throw family out. They assumed wrong. I called my lawyer, Perkins, a man who wore cynicism like an old leather coat. "You want to evict your own daughter?" he asked. "I want the law to say they don't live there anymore," I said. There was a pause. "You've got the paperwork?" "All of it. And a copy's already on your desk." By noon, the notice was official. They had 30 days before the sheriff posted it on their front door. I knew Brandon wouldn't wait quietly for the hammer to drop. That's the thing about people like him. They thrash before they drown. Sure enough, 3 p.m., he called. This time I answered. "You think you're some kind of big man?" he spat. "No," I said, calm as stone. "I'm just the man who owns the place you sleep in." There was a dead stretch of silence. Then the line went dead. I smiled. That was the sound of a man choking on his own pride. At dusk, I drove by the house. Curtains open, TV flickering, but the energy in that place, off. Samantha was in the kitchen, pacing with the phone pressed to her ear, her shoulders tight. Brandon was at the table, head in his hands. The image burned into my mind, not because I felt sorry for them. No, because it told me something important. The fear had set in. They weren't just angry anymore. They were cornered. I didn't honk, didn't slow down, just rolled past in the quiet dark, knowing the next 30 days were going to feel like 30 years for them. And when the eviction notice finally landed, it wouldn't just take their house. It would take the last illusion they had that they could live off me forever. Tomorrow, I'd go for the reputation. Strip away whatever dignity they thought they still had. The first blow had been private, lights out, water gone, eviction notice served. But this one? This one was going to be loud. I waited until Saturday morning. That's when the whole town drifts into the farmer's market on Main Street, coffee cups in hand, gossip already flowing. Brandon loved that market. Loved strutting through it like he was some pillar of the community, shaking hands, handing out advice nobody asked for. By 8 a.m., I was there with Perkins. We didn't go empty-handed. We had a stack of freshly printed flyers, each one a neat, bullet-pointed list of every unpaid bill, every bounce check, every failed business venture they've left in their wake. Dates, amounts, public record, no opinions, just facts, the kind you can't argue with. I didn't even have to hand them out myself. Perkins knew half the stall owners, and they were all too happy to accidentally leave a few copies on tables. 10 minutes in, I saw the first one get passed from hand to hand. By the time Brandon showed up right on schedule, the air was already thick with whispers. He spotted me before I spotted him. The man froze mid-step, Samantha trailing behind him in oversized sunglasses, like she thought she was in a movie. He walked straight toward me, jaw tight, voice low. "You think you're clever?" "No," I said, meeting his eyes. "I'm thorough." He glanced at the flyer in some stranger's hands, then back at me. His nostrils flared. "You're dead to us." I leaned in just enough for him to feel the heat in my words. "You made me dead to you a long time ago." Samantha tugged at his arm, hissing something I couldn't catch. They left without buying a thing. People moved aside for them, not out of respect, but to avoid brushing against a sinking ship. By noon, my phone buzzed with messages from old acquaintances. "Saw your son-in-law today. Rough morning?" The story was already halfway across town. And in a place like this, reputation is currency. Once it's gone, good luck buying it back. That evening, I sat on my porch, watching the cold settle in, feeling the weight of the day. I wasn't done yet. There was one more strike, the kind you don't come back from. And when it landed, they wouldn't just lose face. They'd lose the game entirely. I saved the cruelest for last. Not cruel in the way they'd been to me, petty, mean-spirited, small. Mine was clean, surgical, permanent. The deed to the house. The commercial property Brandon thought he'd buy out once his fake ventures paid off. The mineral rights he didn't even know existed. All of it transferred, signed, and sealed in the name of a trust I'd set up months ago. A trust with one beneficiary, the local Veterans Housing Fund. It wasn't charity. It was a statement. Every brick, every inch of drywall, every drop of sweat I'd put into building those places, it would never, ever be theirs. I timed the reveal to perfection. A week after the market humiliation, right when their mail was already full of overdue notices and legal threats. They got the letter on a Wednesday. I know because I was parked half a block away when Brandon stormed out onto the porch, envelope in hand, Samantha on his heels. He was shouting before he hit the steps, waving the papers like they were on fire. She kept asking, "What does it mean? What does it mean?" His answer came out raw. "It means we've got nothing." I could have walked away right then, but I wanted them to see me. I stepped out of my truck, crossed the street slow steady. Brandon went quiet, his face folding into something halfway between fury and disbelief. "You did this," he said. "Every inch of it," I replied. "And you'll spend the rest of your lives knowing it wasn't bad luck." It was me. No shouting match. No scene. I turned and left them there, standing in the cold with their empty future. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, lights low, coffee cooling in my hands. It was quiet, the kind of quiet you don't get when you're waiting for the next blow to land. Because there were no more blows. The circle was closed. Some people call it revenge. I call it correcting the record. And I left them with nothing worth stealing.